When I saw it, terror overcame me. On the 6th of November, the director of the Catholic School of Camden called in Diego Spirito's parents because their son had been carrying a dead bird in his backpack. The boy responded to all the questions with a carefree attitude, saying that the bird was a gift from his giant, invisible friend. I read somewhere that when someone has nowhere to go, it means they are about to die. I somehow felt as if this was the case for me. I had already counted all the cracks in the ceiling, 11, 12, 13, and the damn clock wouldn't budge. A police car passed by the window, sirens blaring. That was pretty normal in this city. At least the sirens were a distraction from the silence. It was time. I jumped up from my bed and went out onto the balcony. I stood opposite an extremely tall grey building. The empty windows gaped at me with hopelessness. In the late evenings, a girl would appear at one of those windows. I didn't know her name or who she was. I just liked watching her cook dinner, dance around with her hair loose, pet her cat, and finally draw the curtains. Then she would disappear, and the best moment of my day would pass. What did she do behind those closed curtains? Maybe she also felt completely alone in this city. Maybe she simply fell asleep. But I would just go back into my small, dirty apartment. She closed the curtains this time as well, and I was left alone with my insomnia. I was ready to go back in when something strange caught my eye. It was something so wrong, so alien to my surroundings that I didn't immediately realize I was looking at a giant, otherworldly creature. It was crawling along the wall of the opposite building with surprising agility, moving like a spider, sticking to the surface with its long limbs. Occasionally, the creature would stop in front of a window and look inside. I let out a choked wheeze, my throat so constricted in fear that I couldn't even scream. I couldn't move a muscle or rip my gaze away from that creature. A thought flashed through my mind. Calm down, Pete, you've just gone crazy, that's all. But the thought didn't console me. I was so scared that I found the strength to run back into my apartment. I jumped into bed, under the covers, and lay there until morning. I forced myself out of bed at first light. Like every morning, I got up feeling utterly exhausted. But my fatigue gave way to relief. I was alive. I had survived yesterday's nightmare. Now there was one question left to answer. Was it all real, or was I really going crazy? I cautiously looked out the window. The building opposite mine was grey as usual, not showing a single trace of what had happened the night before. Everything was as usual. Was I the only one who had seen that giant creature? I made coffee and decided to take a look in the mirror for the first time in a long time. Red eyes, dark circles, sunken cheeks. No, if I talk about what I saw, people will really think I'm crazy. You look like hell, buddy, I told myself. The day went by and now I was nervously watching the ticking of the clock. I wasn't thinking about the stranger at the window. This time the clock was counting down the minutes until the monster appeared. I carefully looked outside. It was abnormally quiet for our neighborhood, but nothing else was out of the ordinary. The girl at the window shut her curtains and turned off the light. Everything froze for a minute, and I was just about to let out a sigh of relief when an enormous limb appeared from the roof of the neighboring house. The creature smoothly climbed onto the wall and started looking through the windows, just like it had done the night before. I covered my mouth with my hands. I wanted to scream, like a character in a horror movie. My heart pounded in my chest. I reached for my phone with shaking hands. If I could get a picture of this creature, I would be certain that it wasn't just a sick figment of my imagination. I pulled up the camera. The creature had just crawled to a different spot when suddenly it froze and turned its head directly towards me. I recoiled, but couldn't stop looking. The creature quickly got down and crossed the yard with a single jump, clearing the distance with minimal effort. The creature was out of sight in a couple of seconds. My breath caught in my lungs. It was even scarier not seeing the creature. Now it could be anywhere. And with that terrible thought, the creature appeared right in front of my window. It had faded, glowing spots on its enormous black head instead of eyes. They stared right at me. I pulled the curtain shut with shaking hands and collapsed onto the floor, right by the window. "Please, go away," I muttered to myself. After some time, I could feel that the creature really had gone. A thick silence hovered over my head. Suddenly a shuffling sound came from the stairwell. I jumped up. There was a sudden knock on the door and my heart almost stopped. I muttered a swear and snuck towards the front door, but midway I froze. Who could be at my doorstep at this hour? I swallowed the lump in my throat with some difficulty and looked through the peephole. I staggered back in shock. The monster's enormous head was right in front of my door. I backed away, panicked, and my back touched something warm and large. I thought I must have been imagining things, but then I turned around. The creature was in my house, huddled under the ceiling. The monster's head was turned at an unnatural angle and twitched oddly. Its glowing eyes dug into me. I couldn't move. The creature opened its hand and dropped what looked like a pile of trash onto the floor. Its strange black face came closer, as if it was trying to look into my soul. The creature pushed the trash towards me and sort of nodded. I tensed up and closed my eyes. "Please, go away." Right then, I felt a draft. The window had opened. The autumn chill brought me back to my senses. When I opened my eyes, the room was empty. I fell to my knees and took a deep breath. It had all been real. The pile of trash still lay in front of me. It was made up of pebbles, leaves, and dry sticks. There was also some sort of shapeless lump in the middle of the pile. I took a closer look and almost threw up. The lump was a dead bird with a snapped neck. Was the creature giving me a gift? The next day, I couldn't stop shaking. Now I knew that I wasn't just imagining things. The closer nighttime approached, the more I felt fear overtake me. Today I decided not to go to the window, not to look or even think about the monster, no matter what. There was a disgusting, grinding sound coming from outside the window, occasionally interrupted by persistent knocks on the door. I realized the monster wasn't going to leave me alone. By this point, my fear had slightly lessened. The creature could have ripped me to pieces long ago if it had wanted to. That meant it probably wanted something else. I opened the curtains uncertainly. The monster was clinging to the glass on my window. Feeling like a complete madman, I asked what it wanted. Instead of answering, it nodded again and threw something onto my balcony. Then it stared at me expectantly. I stepped out onto the balcony, knowing I might soon regret it. A cat was lying on the floor. I picked it up. Its head hung lifelessly to the side. I pinched my nose to block out the smell. A locket flashed on the cat's neck. Shit. This was Diego's cat, the boy who lived next door. The creature hadn't taken its eerie eyes off of me that entire time. So I asked a completely out-of-place question. Was this creature rational? Still not quite knowing what I was doing, I frowned and wagged my finger at the creature. Don't do that. Don't give me any more dead animals. Do you understand? The creature stuck out its head and let out a squeak. It sounded like nails on a chalkboard, only 100 times worse. I flinched, Did it really understand me? I felt a strange delight at that. I felt as if I had formed some sort of bond with this monster. A monster that was all alone in an unfamiliar world. Where did it come from? What was it looking for? My gaze fell onto the dead cat, and I reminded myself that this creature could still be extremely dangerous. Then, it was as if a plug had been pulled out of me. I started laughing hysterically, unable to stop. Look at me, a person living in the 21st century. I'm suffocating in loneliness, and I'm in love with a girl I don't even know. And the only creature capable of understanding me has crawled here from hell itself. A car alarm went off from below, and someone yelled at me that I'm crazy. I didn't argue with them. I wrapped the dead cat in a towel and took a look through the window opposite me. The light had been switched off long ago. The creature followed my gaze and let out another shrill squeak, as if sympathizing with me. I went back into the apartment and shut the curtains. The next morning, I brought the cat to the outskirts of the city and buried it there. The worst part was that I saw Diego on the way back. He was hanging up handmade posters for his missing cat. Once darkness fell, I went back out onto my balcony. My insomnia will kill me one of these days. I rested my tired eyes on the opposite window. Soon, the lights should turn on, and my heart might be warmed for just a bit. But a minute passed, and then an hour, but the girl didn't appear. My chest hurt. I felt betrayed. A familiar shadow was crawling around underneath. The creature was wandering around the parking lot, heading towards my apartment. In a few minutes, the monster was hanging over my balcony. I felt happy to see it. However strange that was, the creature twisted its neck, and its giant head hung right in front of me. I chuckled and closed my eyes. A heavy thud broke me out of my reverie. My throat constricted from anxiety. Something large had fallen onto my balcony. I opened my eyes, but I was too afraid to look. An odd smell wafted towards my nose. It was sweet, fruity. It smelled of the woman's perfume. I looked down and screamed in horror. The motionless body of the girl who lived in the opposite house lay on my balcony. There was a wide gash on her neck. Her face was pale, her hair tangled. I dropped my head into my hands. I had a frightening thought. There was a dead girl on my balcony, and no one will believe me if I say it was because of a monster only visible to me. What have you done? I'm going to get into so much trouble because of you. I tried to think of a way out of this situation, but then the creature lifted the girl's body by her leg, opened its enormous mouth, and swallowed her whole. I felt sick to my stomach. I screamed at the creature to get out, to leave and never return. It looked at me with a pleading look, as if it were a naughty puppy. An alarm sounded from below, but I didn't care. I was choking in anger. I screamed, and suddenly it wasn't there anymore. The monster had disappeared into the night air. I was left alone. Once again. Some time passed, and everything had gone back to normal. I was still suffering from sleepless nights and empty days. The opposite apartment didn't stay vacant for long, but the light that came from it no longer warmed my tired soul. I would still go out onto the balcony at night and stare into the darkness. A part of me was waiting for that strange creature to return. But now the shadows were simply shadows. Nothing more. I was just about to head back inside when Diego suddenly appeared on the neighboring balcony. He was holding something in his hand and smiling. "What have you got there?" I asked him. "This is my bird, Mr. Pete. My friend gave it to me." Diego unfolded the rag and revealed a pigeon with a snapped neck. The boy giggled, as if someone had whispered a joke into his ear, and looked off somewhere to his side. I followed his gaze with a sinking heart, but there was no one there.